Past tense. It was a long drive to Taradale, on the edge of Loch Maree. It would probably take me 4 hours to get there. I was busy with other work for trade fairs and the like, and so it felt like an inconvenience. This shoot was taking me well away from base, and so just as well the money was good. I packed my road map and headed for the most remote part of nowhere, and Fionn Lodge. The house had finally found its way onto the market. Just about everyone in the northwest had heard of the place, and all that had supposedly gone on there, not least the staff at Chisholm & Sons, the Inverness estate agency, in receipt of my services, and now encumbered with the property's future. It was an odd story indeed. Mary Fraser was an elderly spinster in her late 90s. She'd resided at the lodge for over half a century, before taking her own life just a month ago. She had left a note saying that her wish was to be with her long-dead son, Donald, and that the loch would decide her fate. Her body was never recovered. A verdict of death by suicide was recorded at the inquest. It was concluded that the old woman, burdened with grief and advanced dementia, had leapt to her death from Slioch Broch, right on the edge of the loch. That should have been the end of it. But then the stories began to emerge. Stories of a mother, Mary, and of her son, Donald, living in the big house together over many decades. They were reliant and self-contained, until Donald finally met and proposed to the woman of his dreams in the nearby settlement of Poolew. Just a few days before they were to be married, Donald disappeared, and he was never seen again. The rumours quickly spread. The locals whispered that Mary had killed Donald in a frenzied rage of jealousy. She had never wanted him to leave the lodge, and so the old woman had made sure that he never would. Thereafter, myths evolved into predictable tales of ghostly sightings in the mists on the edge of the loch, and lost souls wandering aimlessly, trapped in limbo, in an otherwise deathly silent, brooding house haunted by its past. Following the inquest, Bruce and Mackenzie, an Ullapool-based solicitor's practice handling the probate and settlement, instructed an estate agent in Poolew to sell the property. However, fueling rumour and speculation further still, the agent refused, stating that there was no market for Fionn Lodge, and that even if there was one, he would have no hand in its sale. Subsequently, Chisholm & Sons became involved, and in turn, my services procured. But I had no interest in any of the ghostly stuff. My brief was simply to photograph colour and black and white exterior shots of the lodge, and the sooner it was done, the better, as far as I cared. And so, after 3.5 hours of travelling, on a dull and grey overcast day, I was now approaching the lodge on the loch. I was 8 miles from Poolew. I enter the gravelled driveway, and made my ascent to the house itself. At that point, the sun appeared from behind thick, dark clouds, beaming golden light through the spruce trees to either side. I was glad of this. I had been concerned that the photographs, especially the monochromes, would appear flat and lifeless in the absence of any bright and direct light. I knew from experience that the best shots would be dampened without the warmth of sunlight on the brickwork. I parked the car, and then I walked around to the front of the lodge. I found the grass freshly mown. Someone had obviously made headway already to ensure that the property was as presentable as it could be. As I stared at the big house, a cold breeze brushed across my face. For a brief moment, I had the feeling that someone was standing directly behind me. But when I turned around, there was nobody. Only the house, standing silently against the backdrop of the loch and Slioch, the 3,200-foot mountain in the distance. The house was abandoned and paint cracked, from another age, the forgotten past. Though it was just past midday, the paint-flaked sash-cord windows on the upper floors looked darker than night. I had to admit that the isolated lodge was an intimidating sight. A part of me could only admire its desolate beauty as it stood bathed in the late autumn sunlight against the blackening cloud. I used a neutral density filter to photograph the exterior. This allowed me to stop down the lens to capture long exposures that would be drawn out to over 30 seconds each. As the low-level stratus clouds were moving relatively quickly across the grey sky, I knew that this would create a blurred sense of movement in the skies that would give more prominence to the lodge itself as it stood silent and motionless in the foreground. My Olympus OM4 was firmly fixed to my Manfrotto tripod to ensure that the house itself was recorded tack sharp. By angling the camera view slightly and changing to a 28mm lens, I could also capture Slioch in the frame, 10 miles in the distance, at the other side of the deeply grey loch. I shot 2 rolls of black and white and 1 of colour, and that was my work complete. I packed away the camera gear and prepared to drive away. But before leaving, I couldn't resist peering through the windows on the ground floor. Inside, the rooms were sparse and unfurnished, dim and void of life or character. In one of the rooms, at the front of the house, a solitary wooden chair sat in the middle of the floor, facing the window. I imagined the view of the loch from that position.